So welcome to this session. Let me get going. So this is how to plan your first workshop. So welcome to this, a workshop with me, Laura McCafferty, the CCA Public Programmes Curator, the Jerwood Supports Coordinator and artist since about 2004. So this supports training workshop is supported by Jerwood. It's aimed at artists and creatives who would like to deliver workshops for the public. And it takes the form of a webinar and it's followed by a brief discussion, and the discussion will not form part of the recording. So the recording is only going to be me. So thank you for joining me today. I hope there is something useful for you to take away from this evening's session. It came about after a discussion with CCA Director Catherine Hemmelreich a few years ago. And we thought it would be great to offer a workshop where we could offer training to artists to deliver workshops. And it just was a conversation that came up through me working on the public programme. And then I thought it'd be really brilliant to offer this to creatives who are keen to share their skills, but they aren't sure where to start. And a few years later, here we are with lots of support from other people along the way. So by the end of the session, I hope that you will have given some consideration to an idea for a workshop that you would like to deliver. So a little bit of background. I worked as an artist since 2004. I have an experience delivering workshops to people of all ages and abilities. I was working as a tutor at Nottingham Trent University on a few different courses until 2020. And there I was leading workshops for fine art and decorative art students. So when I applied for the Public Programmes Curator role, I had a lot of experience in delivering workshops myself. So once in the role, I phoned my predecessor, and I think that's the right word, the other way around, and asked to do, what I do. Do I deliver the workshops? I think was the question I asked. And she said, no, you organise and others facilitate. So that clicked, and I knew what was expected of me, and I knew I would use the experience of being an artist, a facilitator and a tutor to inform what I would then do in that role. So you're going to see lots of nice images throughout. Some of them I'll talk about, some of them I'll not. They're all labelled so you can see what everything is. So since 2020, I've been working with many artists and artist educators to plan and deliver public programmes, workshops, including the schools programme workshops. And here are the children taking part in Memory Rock by Evelyn Morrison in 2024. So through that, we have 6 schools, 8 classes, and we do a kind of mixture of workshops. And I'm going to use some of those as examples to talk to you about kind of pros and cons and things that work and things that don't. This is just kind of a little intro of where that kind of research is coming from. So there's been workshops for Cultural Calendar and the Exhibition Strand. This was a nice big workshop called Chris Belt Workshop with Deborah White in 2023, where that was a kind of exciting. And workshops for the Exhibition Strand this one is Embodied Earth, Soft Clay, Hard Play in 2024. And it was a public programme workshop by Gail Mann for this exhibition Strata. And I was able to take part in this workshop as we had lots of staff in the gallery that day. And to be part of it kind of gave me a lot of insight into what a workshop can do, what you can get from it, and what, as a participant, what you get out of it. Because this was a really exciting one. I absolutely loved it. So I'd like to highlight that the selected images are full of people. A workshop is public facing, and it's designed with the public in mind. Now, I'd like to share all of this experience with those who are keen to work creatively with the public, but are still working out how to make that start. So in the session, there's a few terms that I'm going to use, and I wanted to kind of be clear on those, so to avoid kind of confusion, because I might jump around between different words, but they kind of mean the same thing. So I just wanted to set those terms out before I got going. So in the session, I will refer to those who potentially could deliver workshops as artists. I'll just say artists because I could keep going. This can cover artists, curators, creatives, project coordinators, those working in the arts sector, social practice, public engagement. It has reaches into different areas. So I'm just going to use the word artist, but it'll mean everything. So if you're not an artist and you're here, you come under this kind of term tonight. I will also use the term artist educators and facilitators, and that's what we use when we are working with people who are facilitating the workshops. I will refer to partners. So partners are organizations, they're groups, they're charities employing you on a freelance basis to deliver a workshop, and I would call them partners. So my main area of specialism is creative workshops, generally led by artists. However, you could apply this information to different sectors if you wish. So what to expect from delivering a workshop as an artist or creative? First thing that came to my mind was a fee. You know, you should absolutely always be paid to deliver a workshop. And I did a little bit of research to figure out what the guidelines are. I would always want to pay more. You know, I know how much work goes into making a workshop happen. And as the person who's done both the organizing, the facilitating, the, you know, asking people to do things, I know what's involved in the preparation. So you should always be paid to deliver your workshops. Each country has its own set rate. CCA operates at the Arts Council Northern Ireland guideline rate, £35 an hour. We do £150 for a public programme workshop. That's flat rate. We do plus materials, and we do travel and accommodation. And like we have a budget line that comes from Arts Council that's kind of agreed for that. You can also use, if you're Northern Ireland or Republic of Ireland, you could use the VAI calculator. So you could use for workshop facilitation based on your stage of career. These are the kind of guidelines. You know, like your recent graduate, you should be getting your €125 or £109. If you're mid-career, it's saying €350 or 304. So these are all the kind of like the stuff that's out there that says what it should be. So there's Arts Council England, and they suggest a daily rate of, as you can see, the figures, 212 per day for new, going right up to a lead artist project manager. They're saying it's £379 per day. So I would make a small note of these kind of like guidelines or expectations of what these bodies are suggesting that that you are being paid. But, you know, there is a reality to this. This is a really nice image of, this was a workshop that I led in Long Eaton just before I moved from England to here. So this is Banner, and it's a nice photograph by John Legg. But I wanted, like, there's a reality. And in my experience, it doesn't always work out as you want to do it, you know, as you want it. As a freelancer, you don't always get what you should, and there's like all different reasons for that. So for example, a project may have a budget that has been set before approaching you. A budget may be set by a larger funding body or an organization, and this is one I've come across. Although they really want to deliver a creative workshop and work with a professional artist, they're unaware of the expected rate. And so that comes down kind of the food chain. And I've come across where, you know, I might be working with, you know, the trust, and I'll speak to them and they'll say, we want to deliver this workshop and this is the fee for it. And I'm like, but a professional artist should be getting £150 a day. You know, it's like, although they do have the goal, you know, they'd like to work with you, I just don't always think it's within their means. So the current landscape, and like this kind of, I wanted to throw in my perspective from where I am as a, you know, within my job. So the current landscape, and more recently, I'm really seeing small pots of money drying up, leading to a trend of being asked to work for under the expected rate, or in some cases do more, but with a smaller rate. This is people coming to me in clinics. I'm noticing it in my own trying to secure funding for things. You know, this is the reality of our landscape of what I can see, and I'd be really interested in the discussion if you have any other thoughts on this. So for me, it's a worrying trend, and one that seems to be echoed across Northern Ireland, and I'm noticing artists pulling back on their arts facilitation work. And maybe this resonates with you or yourselves, or maybe we can consider options to counteract this trend. So other questions, you know, do we say no and turn down the work, or do we take the work at a reduced rate? You know, these are questions that we are being faced as creatives. What do we do? So in my own personal experience, I've either been offered a set fee to deliver a workshop, or I've been asked to provide a figure of the required fee. And even then I become very cautious to be seen to be asking for too much. And I've been approached to deliver a workshop as part of an exhibition, and this was going right back to 2007, 2020. And all along I was paid between 200 to 300 a workshop, and that was in England at maybe different rates. So that would have been like alongside an exhibition, and I did notice for longer workshops, like say you're doing them one workshop over a series of 8 weeks, then you're looking at, I was offered like £200 per day. So it was like a smaller fee, but I got more from doing it for longer. That's kind of how it got justified, I think. So I think it's really good to have a baseline that you will do the work for based on your hourly rate or your flat fee, but absolutely never put yourself in the position where you are working for free. So before we read this little prompt, I just want to go over this. So this is the kind of gloomy bit of it, I suppose, but it's also, I think there's people here who this might resonate with, and, I'm curious about what we do. So before we read this, if you just have a little listen. So the reality of this is that I'm noticing the pool of artists and educators is getting small. Artist educators is actually getting smaller. The money available for freelance work is not sustainable. And although the work can be rewarding, people cannot make a regular sustainable income. And many are moving into full-time employment to provide more financial stable lives, as they deserve, of course. So maybe a possible route is to include public engagement in a funding application. And one artist said to me that they've gone down the route of public engagement as it was the only way to secure funding to maintain their art practice, which I thought was interesting. I have seen call-outs for specific public engagement projects. So are you an artist that would work in a public engagement way with a specific group? And those little pots have been appearing. I have seen them on Visual Artists Island. So you just have to decide how much of this you want to do as part of your art practice. Some will see themselves as public engagement artists, and others will approach this as part of their main practice. So being invited to lead a workshop on their artwork to accompany an exhibition, for example. So I'm just going to have a little pause for a second. And on the kind of idea of you as a facilitator being paid, take a minute to write down an instance, perhaps, where you received a fee for a workshop. I'd like you to note if it met the rate as suggested by the organisations mentioned. Make a little note if you felt you were adequately paid or you were unhappy with what you gave in comparison for what you received. And maybe you're an organisation, can you meet these expected figures as set by these bodies? So if we just take a little minute and have a little pen to paper and just have a moment of reflection about where you're at with this or what your experience is. The other thing that you should have, I'm when I was putting this together, it was done very kind of intuitively or through my own experience, and I kind of worked with what came to mind first. And it's actually what I had noticed from all of these workshops that have been part of the Jerwood Supports program. We've asked everybody to kind of we've selected people based on their experience, but the experience has all kind of been gained through doing and through, nobody's kind of sat down and said, this is exactly what you do. So, and it's a similar thing here. These are things that I've encountered or experienced, and I kind of just working through in the order that my mind took it, if you know what I mean. So fee came first, and then I was thinking, right, well, what else do you need next to put your workshop together? And I think you should always have a very clear brief from either somebody inviting you to do it or from yourself, what. And we'll kind of get into that and the more of the details a little bit later. So you should consider who is it for. if you're being invited to run a workshop, ask for all the information available. Who's it for? Have they worked with this group before? What is the age range? What is the level of ability? Where will it take place? You know, is it free? Is it ticketed? Is it open to the public? Is it drop in? Try to ask for previous examples if this group has been worked with before, you know, different experience. If you are deciding who you would like to work with, think about why and how you will gather your participants. Because I know there's people in this group who will, you know, are maybe interested in working independently, and you know, lots more people are running exhibitions from their own spaces or from little studios they've built, you know, as a way of kind of, you know, generating income, of course. So maybe you'd like to run a ticketed workshop in a coffee shop. Maybe a community centre has approached you. Maybe a gallery's put a call out for artist educators. But in all these, maybe you're unsure how to start that process. So how many, you know, how many do they expect to have in the group? You can let people know what you feel comfortable working with. You don't have to feel pressured to kind of do more than you are prepared to do. So, for example, usually we have up to 30 children in a school workshop. And we would ask for support from the teachers and from the teaching assistants. I would be there with the artist educator, and we try to have as many hands on as we can. So the teachers will have to assist. We design the workshop with the level of ability in mind, but what we have noticed with children's workshops is if there's writing, if there's spelling, if there's cutting out, if things are very messy, you know, we're using PVA glue, we do need a lot more hands-on help from everybody involved to make this happen. The other thing, little word of caution, remember, the more you have in a workshop, the more materials to prep. So factor that in the lead up time to when you need to deliver your workshop or when you need to have the materials ready. So in this case here, I had an artist educator who wanted to make these little, you know, gummed paper squares. So I said, no problem, I'll do that. And then I had to start cutting out all the gummed paper squares by myself. And I realized that I had an enormous task because overall I would need enough for 200 children. And I got caught out a few times, definitely with pack-based workshops at CCA, and ended up spending, you know, few too many hours making packs. And this isn't a done thing, you know, I'm still learning the hard way as well. And it, you know, sometimes as much as you can be prepared, there's always things that are unexpected and you have to work out how you're going to deal with it. So this one was, we'd had the tech students in, they'd said they could come and help. So they came in and I had to set them the task of helping me to cut out these loads and loads of little squares. It looked great in the end, but it was a lot of cutting out. What I would suggest in terms of how many, so for workshops for adults and 16 over, I would suggest 8 to 12 participants so that you can get the attention needed from the facilitator, and the facilitator does not then feel overwhelmed. And you can see in these images, each facilitator has time to move around the group, to have conversations, to help each participant individually. And in this, I have found less is more if possible. So one of these workshops was a free ticketed event by Jane Butler for Northern Ireland Science Festival. And the one on the right was working with a dedicated and pre-arranged group at Age Concern with Niall McLaughlin for Positive Aging Month. Now, you can be under pressure to deliver big numbers, but I will always try and go for quality over quantity. And, you know, there is a cost to that. Then if you're having a workshop with 8 to 12 people in it, it's not 20, it's not 30. So if you're up against it in terms of numbers and reporting, you know, what are those numbers going to look like in terms of your outcome? So, but I feel it's really important to look after the participants and to be generous with your time as a facilitator, and that people don't feel rushed. And I really don't want my facilitators to feel super stressed or overwhelmed by the number of people they have to get around. Now, it doesn't always go to plan, and you have to take a note and you have to learn from it. And there's someone here who does know of the time myself and the facilitator took a very generous approach to the workshop numbers, as we had so many people that were interested and really keen to attend. And I learned the hard way, realizing that we had too many people for the workshop's aims, which was to hand weave an intricate crush belt. It was a little bit hectic, and although it was fun in one way, it didn't completely meet the aims of our workshop as we had planned and attended. So it became something else, you know, and I would say you aim to avoid this kind of scenario where it's a little bit out of control, and just try and stick to the plan. So I did want to do a little bit on online workshops. So this, if it's a webinar style, so for numbers, you can increase the numbers as there's less time needed for introductions and interactions. So you'll see examples of these coming up on our supports page. So you can decide if you have the camera on, camera off, if everyone's on mute. You can decide if you're the only one introducing themselves, as in the case of this workshop, which takes the webinar style. If you're all introducing yourselves, how will you go about this? You know, as a facilitator, how do you hold that space? What prompt will you give? So I usually do give us your name, give us your location, and what brought you here to this workshop, or give us your name, give us your location, you know, what do you want to get out of this, or where are you at in your work or something. Just try it, but very brief. Brief prompts, as people do like to, give lots of information in their introduction. So if you're specific, they won't be able to do that. So how will you pass the introductions along? This is a really nice one. So you select people. So you'll say, Jack, introduce yourself, and then when you're done, choose the next person, and you move, as a group, you move around. And this tip came from Frances Worrell Campbell in How to Write a Door and Walk Through, which was an online writing workshop that you can see in the picture. So, and this works nicely, and it gets people interacting straight away. Online workshops can be a little bit awkward at times, but overall you can get some nice moments. And I think, like small group as well. We tried for writing workshops, we had like 10 people online, and it was a lot for the facilitator, especially as there was a sharing element in it. I think, we'll go to this one. So just to kind of expand on online and considering the numbers that you have in it and how to hold that little space. So it's an intense space, and it's come in and out of favor since the pandemic. I still think offering a blended approach is really useful, and it allows for a varied reach across into different participants. So blended means like we'll do both. We do some online, some in person. So as a facilitator, you do need to watch the screen and make sure that you spot those trying to speak. There will be people who are more comfortable speaking and those sitting back. And as a facilitator, you've got to manage that space, and you've got to give everyone the time and bring them into the conversation. So think about duration of an online workshop. 2 to 2.5 hours is a lot of screen time. People do get screen fatigue. We often plan a break halfway, screen break. So, and the tricky bit about online, you don't get the lovely experience of being in a room with people. You don't get all those nice things that brings. But I think as a facilitator, you can use the space well, and by the end, you can create a sense of camaraderie and, bring people together in that way. So as a facilitator, I have noticed it's really tiring to hold that space. So with the CCA writing workshops, the facilitators have to prepare slightly more material than if they were running the workshop in person. So over the last 4 years of doing it, they're usually pretty exhausted after the session, and because there's less informal chatting, there's no space for the participants to speak to each other, and so therefore there's more on you as a facilitator, and more content is actually needed. So you obviously there's pros, and we know the pros, we're experiencing them right now. You don't need to leave your home, your studio. It's efficient in terms of you as a facilitator time-wise. Instead of taking a full day to deliver your workshop, you can go about your day and then set up in the evening and from your home, have your dinner, like you can do it one workshop and by traveling very little. So what I also noticed is people come from a wide range of areas and locations. This gives you a varied audience and a wide range of experience, spanning national and international, which I think is always really exciting, brings a lot of experience to the Zoom. So people don't need to travel from their homes, making it accessible, and no cost to attend. We have noticed it's especially good for those with mobility issues, social anxiety, and caring responsibilities. We found that 8 to 10 people is maximum for an interactive online workshop for any that I've been part of, especially if you want to get round all the participants and let them share their work and their thoughts. And on that note, sharing of participant work and viewpoints has always taken more time than anticipated. So build that into planning or how much content you are planning to deliver. And the other thing, you can set a timer for how much a participant shares. I think what they were doing in the writing workshop was, instead of like share all your work, it was like share 100 words of your work. Because if you have no limit, there's no limit, and you can't stop people when they're going. So we did, you need to have a limit on it. Oh, went too far. So this was a really nice case study of one that I thought that worked, and it was for Irish Modernisms in 2021 with Laura Nelson. So it was like bang in the middle of everything online. So for me as an organizer, I was really happy how that went. It was themed to accompany the exhibition. It picked up on the typography alluded to throughout the work in the exhibition. The facilitator was identified, approached, they agreed to deliver the workshop, and then I get really excited when it all comes together and the artist says yes. So I wanted to say, don't underestimate how much people will enjoy working with you, and they will be excited that you've said yes. So all materials were free in this, and they were all posted out to the participants beforehand. It was a really good attendance. It was delivered well. There's always things to improve, but in the pandemic times, this worked well, and it's something I would still keep in these more blended times. This is another example of a way as a facilitator to use online to deliver a workshop. So this was one of our artist educators, Sarah McNabb. She responded to Ferox by Kieran O'Doherty, and we prepared the materials at CCA and delivered these to the A classes. So I make up the packs, drive them around, drop them off at the schools. The children watched an instruction video made by Sarah in their classrooms and joined in with the activity at their desks. So again, a very efficient way of working, as one video can be played in various places multiple times. The materials do cost more and take longer to prepare for than an in-person program workshop. Like for example, if we have, I would need like nearly 150 to 200 pounds to make all the materials for my 8 classes for a pack-based workshop. And if it's in the gallery and they're all coming, I can probably have everything for 40 to 50 pounds. So it's made a significant addition to the budget. But then you weigh it up, you've no bus travel, you have to weigh all these things up. So we don't get to work with the children if it's online, and that is sad, but it's economical time-wise and facilitator hours-wise. It works if you are on a budget or if you don't have the capacity time-wise to deliver your workshop in person. So I wanted to throw this out to you as, you know, like, how do these workshops come about? You know, what happens? Like, how do you, if you have an idea, what do you do with it? So I'd always say take a risk. I know we've seen this image previously, but I wanted to pick back up on it as a case study. So in 2020, we started these online workshops, writing ones, and it all came about as Maeve McNutt approached us with a writing workshop plan. And actually, it was like the stars had aligned because I was really keen to introduce a writing workshop. And then we met and discussed and figured out a structure of 3 2-hour weekly sessions to happen on a midweek evening via the CCA Zoom. So this needed to use a ticket model, which means by dividing the facilitation fee by the number of participants, there was no material or travel overhead, so all the ticket money was then used to pay the facilitator to deliver the workshop series. And we've continued with that model each year by inviting an artist to devise and deliver a workshop. And I found that being consistent in this kind of this sort of way. So you might like, again, it's quality, not quantity. So if I do one per year, but do it really nicely and do it well and considered, I feel like there's a lot of value in that than trying to spread yourself too thin. So take a risk, reach out, approach a charity, a community group, a gallery, make a pitch. So scheduling, timing, and I think I even mentioned this and then, you know, when I was welcoming you to the session. So when you are planning a start time for your workshop, think about your audience. And here's my kind of experience gathered over the years. So family and children workshops seem to be great anytime between 1 and 4. And this allows, and like we don't really do mornings because it doesn't work with our gallery times, but either side of meal times and not too late in the evening, because we find that little kids aren't that keen to get stuck into a workshop after 5 o'clock, unless it's an evening workshop. Family, you know, there's different things. These are general rules, not rules, they're general, no rules. So schools workshops, we do them between 10 and 12, and this allows children to have their lunch when they get back and enough time to travel back to the school. They don't do them after that. There's just not enough time in their school day. So Saturday afternoons, we would run public facing workshops. They're always, I've just really liked 1 to 3 or 2 to 4. I know there's some people who have opted for slightly longer workshops and they wanted to do the 3 hours, and so having them as 1 till 4 p.m. I just try to avoid anything around midday and anything around 5 o'clock, because I just think it's, you know, it's too late to bring people into town, and, you know, it just doesn't seem to work. So I also make a point of avoiding workshops public for 16 plus or adults. I don't do anything between 2 and 4 p.m. during the week online, as I just think it rules out people with school-age children or other caring responsibilities, or, you know, just general things. I just try and avoid those times. When we've worked with older people, after lunch has been brilliant. We do everything about 1 o'clock, and they've had their, you know, had some dinner, had some lunch. If you do it till about 3, it gives enough time to get home for dinner. So when you're thinking of your person, you're thinking about their travel, you're thinking about, like, I think about when they need to eat. Because, you know, I don't like coinciding things with like meal times, because I just think that's really bad scheduling and really bad planning for me, because, you know, it just doesn't work. You might have a different point, and I'm very keen to hear everything later. This is just my experience. So for online workshops, I've tried all different ones. 10 to 12:30 is what I try and stick to. And then, like, I know people are working, and then, you know, I can't get inside the heads of everybody to try and figure out what's going to work. So I try things out. 10 o'clock to 12:30. And that means if they, you know, I don't know, I can't please everyone, but I try. So I'll mix it around on the day. So if I am doing it on the mornings, I might do one, like I'll alternate. If I'm doing a series, I'll do it on Wednesdays, or I might do it on Fridays mornings, or I might, I'll mix it up. I'll do some on Thursday morning, I'll do some on Tuesday mornings. I'll test different things out as a way of catering for different people on different days. This is a new time for me to run this at 6 p.m. and it's an experiment. I wanted to test this out. I wanted to see what happened if we didn't do it in the afternoon or we didn't do it the morning. What happened for participants if it was in the evening? Did it work? I actually avoid Sundays, as everyone needs a day off, and people have asked me to come and like deliver things on a Sunday, and I just say no. I just feel like that's one of my own baselines, my own rules. I just think people need a day off. You just need a day off. That's my go-to. Something that's been really, really happening loads, like maybe this has happened you've planned, you've prepared. There's a lovely picture here of Jack McGargle's workshop, all beautifully prepared. And I selected this image because I just got the sense of, the effort you've put into thinking about the people who have booked onto your workshop. Like you've considered them, you've prepared materials. You have the materials bought, the space is rented, your workshop's free. So what do? The night before, two people say they're ill. One person has to go to work. You haven't heard from two others. They haven't confirmed. So what do? For me as an organizer, I try my best to get people there, and we never cancel the workshop. We always continue. Even if you have two people, I think it has happened, you go down to two people. So I think the planning in this, I think it's an expectation to manage, in yourself, and even if you're an organizer, as it can be really disheartening when people don't turn up, like for you putting all the work in, the facilitator, nobody's there, it's not nice. It's not a good feeling. But some people are like, oh well, it's fine, everyone's getting paid and everyone's paid, doesn't matter who turns up. But as a facilitator, you want to connect with people and you want to provide your activity for the public, and so you just really hope that they're there. So I think a lot of people don't turn up. They think they're the only one. It's a particular challenge for free workshops. People are just not turning up. So some places are charging now to avoid this. Others say pay what you can. I know the Void is trying that, and they said it's been working for them. So it's really down to the space, the place, the organization, and it's what their ethos is. If some what's your ethos? Is your ethos to put in a pay what you can? Is your ethos only offer free workshops? Is your ethos not, I'm independent, this is my business, I need the ticket money to cover the overheads and my fee, everything, you need the money for that. So it's also down if you're getting your facilitation fee from the tickets or if it's already covered, no matter how many people turn up. And I would really like to hear your thoughts on this. It's like, what do you do, or what do you feel when this happens to you, or what would you do if it happened to you? So you should always be paid no matter what, and you can discuss that in your planning. And let's see what comes up, and if anybody has any comments on that. So the thing that has been massive, and it's one I'm always trying to do better, and sometimes you think that you've things covered, then you realize that you each had a set of expectations that you hadn't actually talked to each other about. So expectations and communication, in my experience, this is where things have gone wrong. So the big question is, who is doing what? Agree on this well in advance of the workshop. In the initial meeting, find out who's responsible for setting up the space. Do they have tables and chairs? How many? What equipment do you need? Do you need to source it, or is it already at the place? Materials, is there a budget? What is it? And can you actually deliver the workshop with that? Who is organizing or the materials, who's ordering these, who's researching them, who is paying for them, who's prepping the pre-made materials. You know, if you're struggling with your own cash flow, can you ask your partner organization to order them direct from their account, or are you happy to purchase and claim back through expenses after the workshop? So overall, like, I think workshops can be both tiring and rewarding, and overall, like, an excellent communication just helps in the planning stages for both you and your partners. Now, I set out a few questions into the ether about, you know, anything that people would like covered. And so I did a little bit of research, and there's some information here, but insurance was one of the topics somebody was interested in. So if you're working with an organization or a charity, you come under their insurance. And if you're running workshops at home, you will need your own public liability insurance. Now, I've been asking around. I was like, you know, what are people doing? So in all my time running workshops, I have never needed my own public liability insurance. And I've always been insured by whatever or partner that I'm working with. But if you need to source your own insurance, here's a couple of bits of information which might be useful if you don't already know it. So AN insurance, I asked around, I said, everybody, what do you do about insurance? Everyone said AN. So once you're a member, I think it's about £38 a year, you're covered 10 million public and products liability. You've got 5 million professional indemnity. So if you're in the region where an area where this works, maybe this is something to think about. VAI recommends that artists contact various companies, and if you go to the VAI website, and I can supply links afterwards if you need them. So they had a whole page on insurance, and they actually had links to companies that they were recommending. So there was Event Insure, Arrakis, Quote Devil, and they're all companies listed on their webpage. So all individual, and like maybe like definitely in the comments if anybody has anything to throw into this, because it wasn't my big area of experience, and that's just from the background that I've had. Well, there was a little note on the VAI webpage which said all individuals registered members of VAI Ireland who are permanently resident in Northern Ireland and have paid the appropriate subscription will automatically be covered by members' public and products liability insurance. I didn't know if I didn't know that or hadn't seen it. So if anybody has any tips on that, definitely share in the chat afterwards. So another question that came up in the questions was the risk assessment. And people were keen to kind of know, what do you do? What happened? So I'm just going to do a brief kind of summary of my interpretation of it. So the aim is to maintain, for me, is always to maintain a safe working environment and avoid accidents. And I always say my aims are to look after the participants, the facilitators, and the space, whether that's in the Zoom or whether that's in the workshop space. And it's essential to carry out a risk assessment in the planning stages. But I also do one on the day of the event. Just before setup, I'll do a walkthrough, I'll check it over, check the space, talk things over, see if we need to make adjustments. You know, like this image was DILAB 2022. Actually, I'll go into that a wee bit down here, but I'll let me speak to it in a second. So I would also say it's good to visit the space that you will hold a workshop to familiarize. If you can't do it, ask anybody you're working with to do a Zoom walk with you. You will be looking at the size of the room, potential challenges. In my case, we always have artwork in the space, and I need to consider the proximity to it. If it could be damaged, I also check for wheelchair access, and I make sure that I have provision to accommodate a wheelchair user throughout the space and around any furniture or artwork. And we usually do that one on just before the event. I'll scan through, I'll move things over a bit, I'll just make adjustments to the space so that it's appropriate for everyone. In advance, we also ask if participants have access needs. I'm not sure if any of you have done this, but in previous online workshops and different ones, we would say, also, are there any access needs and requirements that Frances could know about so as to help you during the sessions? Of course, these participants are not expected or obliged to share this information, but we ask, and something came up, somebody said, like, I prefer to have my camera off. Somebody said, can you supply all written material in advance to allow them the time to do it? And in training workshops that I have done, that has come up as well, like to ask. It keeps changing, like, it's better to do, if you're doing disability training, even if you're doing things online training, just to keep updated on the terms and on the expectations, and even like wording that people are using, because it's continually being adapted. Even things like when we started off, we weren't asking for pronouns. Then we went through a phase of like, everybody ask your pronoun and add it. And then it shifted to, in one of the workshops, the facilitator was saying, please don't feel obliged to add your pronoun. You don't need to do that. So there's like, it's good to kind of be aware of that landscape of language and expectations. So we also consider if the activity is appropriate for the age or ability of the children. For example, like we would always, when we're working with older people in the planning, Lindsay McDougall came to me and said, I really would love to do some embroidery with them. I think it would be really beautiful, but we decided we have to be prepared for older hands with potential issues with joints or mobility. So we opted for something that was way more looser and less kind of putting less pressure on their hands. Accidents, report everything to the person you're working with or your line manager on an accident form. When you're working with an organization, ask them what their health and safety policy is, if that's important. Like, you do ask. And what I have noticed, as myself, from my experience, I might have intention to like make sure I go through all this stuff, but things get busy, things get missed. So as a facilitator, how are you going to keep yourself safe and make sure you're asking those kind of questions to make sure that you're protected, and there's different policies involved around you. So we'd always make sure materials and equipment, make sure they're safe to use and age appropriate. In my early days at CCA, I ordered a lot of drawing ink for a drop-in outdoor workshop. And it was this lovely idea, big expressive painting with drawing ink. And the children had a blast using the messy materials. But afterwards, I realized that the ink stained. And they stained the footpaths. Everybody's hands were blue and purple and pink. And I knew that I had made a massive error in selecting totally inappropriate materials. The children loved it. Like, they were throwing ink everywhere. We did these big floor paintings, but never again. I now know that if you want people to use messy materials, you have to provide water-based materials. They have to be washable. You need to supply aprons and a place to wash hands. And what we have noticed as well with the children, the little ones, they really hate getting really covered in sticky. Like if you're using a lot of PVA glue, we're noticed a lot of them have a lot, sensory issues where they've got stuff stuck to their hands and they don't like it. So we have to provide wipes or make sure that we have a sink close by that they can wash their hands. So you're thinking in your plan, and you're thinking about your participant and what they're likely to do with their materials and what could go right and what can go wrong. So general things, as like from back to basics, I went through our health and safety policy at the gallery to kind of like work out risk assessment, what do we do here? So things that came up were big ones for us: trip hazards, cables, tape down cables, tape down mats, get road covers if you're running cables outdoors. And another one I've noticed is, people take off their coats, and if they throw them on the ground, then like that's a major, I have a health and safety issue on my hands, because they jump on it, they'll slide, they fall, so it can be very basic things, but I have to just be, as a facilitator, watching the space and making sure that anything that is arising is being dealt with. So, and I think as well, I just wanted to say this one, so the dye lab, Lindsay was going to use a steamer, so we had the hot plate out. Yeah, this one. So if you had heat, was one of the things. They can be really potentially dangerous. So if you're a facilitator, you do that part. You do the hot part, with the plates. This is what she was using, a hot plate to steam these fabric eco dye bundles. So with sharps, again, avoid all blades. Going right back to the little strips of paper being cut. So I had the tech volunteers in. They were using sharps, so they had blades, and one of them cut their finger. It's like, I now know that all those things I need to either do myself. Don't pass any cutting activity on to participants of schools. We prepare everything in advance. Anything that's looking like hazardous or potentially challenging in that way, we do some of it. We do some, not everything, because I'll talk about this. You still need to provide challenge as well. So another question that came up was promotion. And so people have asked me about promotion and social media, and I'm not the marketing person, but I work closely with them to promote any workshop that's happening. The first thing I start with is web page presence. That's kind of like your core. Once you have the web page ready for your event or your own thing or whatever you're doing, you can capture all of the details in there. So do this for each workshop, give your workshop a title. Lots of people come to me with their plan, but no title. So it can be something very clear and specific, saying what it is, or it can be something a bit more intuitive or imaginative. Like this one was Shedtastic Creations in this picture. So the a key image. What's your image? So they've got basic things to make your event happen. You have an idea for a workshop. What do you need to make it happen? You need a title, you need your aim, you need your brief, you need a key image. Okay, you need what is the image that's kind of like holding it all together. Sometimes it's not about a series of images. Sometimes it's just having that one image, and that's the one that you can use across everything. We would use things that are like inspired by the idea of the workshop, so something a little bit more kind of abstract, or something that will be covered. So people have selected images of art writers as a way of like, that's what they wanted their image to be, because it was something that would be covered in the workshop. Maybe the object or the things you'll make, and I always provide an image of materials, whether it's for public, for like anything promoted. I use just do a little kind of display of the materials and let people know what they're going to use, and I think that can be quite enticing. I think it's nice if people see what materials are used or what's available, and then they know a bit more what they're going to do. So a brief description of the activity and 200 words for a short intro is what I think works. You don't need loads and loads of detail. You just need to be really clear on what it is that they're going to do. So we have had more complex workshops where we've needed 400 words in the brief to outline what the participant will encounter in the session. So perhaps longer it would be longer if it was across multiple weeks, because you would be providing overall aims and what you'll cover in each session. So then it becomes a longer description. you're going to give the specifics. So the specifics are, and I would call them, is it one-off or is it multiple? Where will it happen? Is it going to be online, in person? What location, what venue, what duration? So you're giving people all that information. Is it what age is it aimed at? Who's the target audience? Is it ticketed? You know, you got to say, is it drop in? Is it free? If it's free, then an organization would have the budget in place for it, or a grant's been achieved to cover the overheads. If it's ticketed, you work out how much you need for everything and you divide it. So once all this information is in place on your webpage, you can send it to people and other people can refer to it to pull the information. Maybe, you know, like I would always do this with Northern Ireland Science Festival. So once I have my webpage ready, I can send it to them and they can pull the information off it and they got a better idea of what the workshop is going to be. So I just see this as kind of like a good place to start. When you're doing your own workshops and your own promotion, you can share this and then you can refer to the web page again in your own social media promotion. So this is quite a nice example of an intro. So we've seen a few pictures from this workshop. So How to Write a Door and Walk Through is a 3-part workshop by CCA Research Associate 2021 Francis Worrell Campbell. The series approaches writing as a means of escape, a method of slipping away from the fixed ways of imagining the world and into previously unthought possibility. Hosted online via Zoom on Thursdays, 4th, 18th November, 2nd December, 2021, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And in that kind of brief, that you can see how short that is, but it captures the event. It tells you the title, who's delivering it. It gives you a kind of intriguing insight into what it might be about and just gives it a, you know, information. There was more details later on at the bottom of the webpage, which would say that this was for 18 and over. So little pause where I come to you. So reflection point 2. This is kind of, I just wanted to throw in a little bit to hear from you. You won't need to share this. This is just for you in this space to think about the things that I'm covering. Some of them may be relevant, some may not, whatever, but hopefully, you know, you're thinking about title, image, what it might be, who you want to work with. So what would you like to do? So here's the scenario. You have an idea for a workshop, bubbling. What would you like to do? So one line, describe the activity. Who would you like to work with? So you look into your workshop, who are your participants? Who are they? Think about where you might like to run this and write down any of your thoughts. And I will see you in a few minutes. So now you've had a little think about something potential that you would like to do. I'm just going to bring us back around into a little bit more of social media, which came up a few times in the questions. So who will manage your marketing or your social media was one of the questions. So you may be working with an organization, they might be managing social media. You'll be asked to provide all the information that you've just listed, plus your brief. And then they will put the webpage and the social media post together for promotion. I would always ask to proofread it, you know, have a look at it, make sure you're happy with it. You need to decide if you would like your social media handle tagged in the post. And this has come up a few times where I've had to check with people. We would always check if you want to add your social media before, you know, sometimes if it is a professional account for your practice, then it can be made visible on Instagram in the stories. If you're getting started and you're still using a personal account, you can still be tagged in the post, but it can be hidden or pushed to the edge of the Instagram stories. So you can still reshare, but viewers cannot click immediately through to your personal account. Personal preference. So social media promotion for public workshops is essential. If you don't advertise it, if you don't promote it in a public way and you need people to sign up for it, how are they going to find out about it? If you're working with a specific group where you're dealing directly with an organization, a gallery, a community group, and you're working with a specific group and you're not advertising it, then a news item or a post, a news in your webpage or a post on your social media to let people know what you're doing, that you're active, and it gives a visual on the kind of workshops that you deliver and who you can work with. So maybe you have a website, you've set up a web page for that. I'm not getting into all the details because I'm not going to be doing a full marketing lowdown here. But before the workshop, you can check for photo permission. So this is coming up more. So during any workshop, if you've time and you've asked for photo permission, you can add some stories. So this is the inky the inky paintings live. They were still wet, as you can see. And we had those going up on stories to say it was happening now. But if you're a solo facilitator and document as you go, you're not going to have time to start adding stories when you're in the middle of delivering a workshop. It's not going to happen. So it's more about showing people what you did, and it can be helpful to have another pair of hands to document. And during any workshops that I'd organize, I'd always check for permissions from the people I want to photograph. Then I document for the CCA's record and also share the images with the facilitator so they can use them for their own promotion and documentation. So photo-wise, I would always take photos of the material set out, overview of the room, facilitator in action, both speaking to the participants and working directly with them, as you will see throughout this presentation. I opt for a lot of detail images with focus on hands. The hands allow me to avoid issues with safeguarding and it keeps them anonymous. Also, the close-up nature is really good. It gives the viewers a real sense of what's happening. Images of process are good, given that kind of idea of the activity and what the participants were doing. With family workshops or drop-in, they're really busy. So I try and focus on getting an image of the person or the family with their creations as they leave the space. In this way, I have the opportunity to speak directly to the parent, the guardian, the child, ask if they're happy to have their image taken. This photo wall, this idea of like posing against the wall in the one picture has worked. It means I don't take pictures of people who do not wish to be captured, plus those who are documented. It's a nice celebration of their creations. Absolutely. If you have a budget, hire a professional photographer. The results can be excellent. You'll have good quality images and you can use these for future promotion and applications. So all the workshops that I organize are promoted through social media, such as Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky. It starts with the dedicated webpage. Adverts through CCA are placed on VAI, which gets a lot of interest, and you can register that on VAI. So here's a couple of hands. So this is free drop-in workshop. It was all ages. Nice. It kind of gives a sense of the activity. It's all like safe. It's anonymous. Then this is an image of a family-friendly workshop with finished creations with permission from parents and children. So I capture them before they leave. It also means I can get a little bit of feedback. How was it? Did you have a good time? Did the children enjoy it? And then we get these kind of this type of images. I just find that in the really busy public workshops with loads of families and you're talking about 30 to 40 people at any time doing the activity, I am more needed hands-on rather than taking pictures. So I want you to take a little picture of this. This is I'm not going to get into it. So people had asked me about booking links. So please take a picture of this. I asked around. I checked in with Tansy Cowley, who is doing marketing for Void and also has been doing it for us. is doing it for us currently while we recruit. I also checked in with Aoife Bonner, who is Sass and Halo, who is my cousin. So I was like, can you give me some insiders? And these are the kind of things that they said, but I just want you to do, if that's relevant, take a picture of it. And as those quotes do give you kind of a bit of insight into what's working for them. Tandy is an expert on the marketing, so she was giving us some really nice tips. So that's a little screen grab if you would like, or picture, or I can send afterwards. This was also from Tansy. So I was like, Tansy, how does this work? So you can advertise through Facebook and Instagram easily using the Meta Business Suite. As she's saying, you can tailor it. So it goes out specific times to specific audience. You can create based on behavior, interest, life stages, as well as geographical location. You can pay for an ad without having a rolling payment system like Google Ads. Ideally, you would have a pixel which connects to the website you're hosting the event on, but that wouldn't apply to Eventbrite. It just means you're getting better tracking. So that's kind of like a little bit of, if you're going a little bit deeper on the social media and you want to know how to advertise, maybe that's applicable to you. So how are we doing? Gee, time goes fast. So another question that came in. So I tried to respond to what came in, and it was good because I wouldn't have always gone down this route. So safeguarding, now I don't need to go into a huge amount of detail because we actually did a safeguarding training by Roisin Timlin from Volunteer Now, and she delivered a specific session aimed at those working in the creative industry. I actually have that film now ready to be added to our supports page. So that's a little bit of support said. So I don't want to like go over things which aren't my 100% specialism. But there's key, there's key things that you need to be aware of. So, and in all instances, what I've noticed is, as a freelance artist and work with people from various backgrounds and abilities, some were vulnerable members of the community, as in this group in Long Eaton. I was always accompanied by the team members from the groups. These people provided safeguarding for everyone involved, and I did not lead the workshops without support of a team or independently, or I didn't lead any directly from my own studio. So in my current role, I'm now that safeguarding person, so I have to be the one that's doing the Garda vetting check, which I did before I started the job. I've now also undertaken safeguarding training, completed an Access NI check through CCA, as it's not possible to have that kind of check as an individual. I've also completed disability training, autism training, and I will always be present with the facilitator employed on a freelance basis. In CCA school program, during visits, I'm always present. It's my job to manage the space, to keep both participants and facilitator in a safe working environment, and I will liaise with teachers and assistants on what's happening on the session. So things I noticed: what happens if something's divulged to you? You hear things, don't you? Pass it on to your line manager, pass it on to the teacher in charge, pass it on to the person who's got the group. There's people here who will have experience in running workshops as a solo facilitator with vulnerable groups. That's not been my experience, so I can't speak to that, but I know that does happen. That person again would need to have all the checks done and all the, have carried out all the training. So, yeah. So the other thing, like, when we went back to numbers, like how many people are in the group, are you going to have enough hands in the group to manage the space? How are you going to like deal with the requirements of the participants? How are you going to put extra people in place to help you, to support you to deliver the workshop? So another person asked me, interestingly, about evaluation. So did it work? You had it planned, but how do you know if you've achieved what you set out? How do you even know if the participants were happy with the session and what they got out of it? So from my experience, participants come to get space outside of their day-to-day scheduling to do something new, to gain a skill, be part of something, to meet new people, and even give time to something that they've been trying to do, but they couldn't get it done in their own time. They've now made time through the workshop provision. So to find out more, you can let people know in advance. So at the time of booking, you can say, I will be following up with an evaluation. You can have these ready in an in-person workshop. You can print them out and you can ask people to fill them in, or you can email them directly to participants afterwards. I usually say feedback is greatly appreciated, and we do use it then to kind of like rejig things for the next ones. In my experience, they always say, people usually say they would have liked more, or they would have liked if the workshop was longer. They comment on expanding network, exploring a new technique. We asked them to mention one excellent thing and one thing they would have improved. Realistically, not everyone replies, and you need to decide if you move on. Do you send a reminder? If you don't hear from the participant, you can suggest they write a couple of lines in an email as the form that you send can sometimes become a bit of an obstacle. So in terms of your own evaluation, did it work for you? You know, what did you enjoy? What would you do better, and what would you do differently, and what would you never do again? You know, you've got to check in with yourself about what worked. So, you know, did it feel good? Did you achieve what you wanted to achieve? Did you overstretch yourself? Did you try and do too much? Did you give yourself enough time to do what you wanted? Did it become rushed at the end, for example? It often does. So check in and then revise. Oh, there we go. So this is my last slide. And this again, this lovely image. You'll see a few of this image from this workshop. It was the full spring workshop with Jack McGarrigle. It was absolutely gorgeous. Do you run over or not? No. Keep to the time. People have things organized. Don't assume you can run over. Time management can be sorted. You know, don't take it personal. If you get a little nod to say you're going to have to finish, you give people a heads up that it's you know, it might overrun in advance. You could always say it'll end between 6 and 6:30 rather than 6. You know, give a flexible ending so people are prepared for the later one, but you can still finish at 6. That's kind of nice. Plan. Give all your materials, be generous, plan enough materials, always have too much, don't go looking for things. You can always reuse them or you can return them. We recently have been using materials from Oxfam, you know, things that would have been in landfill. So share your knowledge and pass it on. And I think as a facilitator, what are you prepared to give? You know, are you prepared to give everything? Or, you know, what do you want to give of what you know or what you do? So give enough challenge in the workshop, enable a participant to surprise themselves in what they produce, give enough of a challenge that allows the participant to be surprised at what they could do. That's always the best bit about a workshop. So give the space to push themselves, but not to the point where they lose hope in what they're doing. That happens when they just give up. I don't get it. They said, I don't get this. I don't want to do it. So when they start to question, you've got to pull it round. You're the facilitator, right? You've got to hold that space and find a way to get person back in. Preparation for a new workshop will absolutely take more time than you could possibly expect. Are you okay with that? It takes ages to prepare a workshop. Test the timing. If it works, a little nod. I find that people love offer refreshments. It's like really, really basic, but if you have a cup of tea in the middle of it, it just relaxes everybody. And even if you don't have the budget of it, sometimes I'll just bring milk and tea bags just to kind of, you know, and obviously offer your alternatives of your different milks, or, you know, be prepared to cater for everybody. So lastly, we think you are the facilitator. Think it of as holding the space, be observant, be flexible, read the room. If something isn't working, shift it. Workshops are tiring and rewarding. Working with groups of people of all ages is powerful stuff. I love to see people's faces lighten up when they've realised they could do something, but give time to rest following the workshop if possible. So we're finished. Lovely image from Full Spring. Big shout out to Jack, facilitator Jack McGarrigle, for this absolutely beautiful image. When like this is your dream scenario, when if you're working somebody and you say, can you send me your key image? And this comes in, you know, it's like, it's really beautiful. So thank you for that one.